Good morning. I'm just going to give you another update on a case that I'm working on with a landlord. This one isn't finished yet, and I've been working with the landlord for the last 4 months on this particular case. So, a very quick synopsis of the situation. The client of mine is an accidental landlord. Basically, he is now the owner of a property after his parents passed away. Parents had a lodger in the property, and he wasn't aware that when he took over the property and the lodger, that obviously that lodger then became a tenant, and obviously all the legislation that came with it. So you can imagine, obviously, his surprise when he got to a point where he needed to serve notice or something needed to happen, and it was realised that this was now a tenant and not a lodger. So basically, the whole lodger to tenant situation happened about 5 years ago, and my client had allowed the lodger to remain in the property. My client didn't move into the property, so this particular lodger was able to have a lovely big four-bedroomed house to himself, but still paying the lodger amount of rent each month, which was a minimal 500 and something a month. Properties in this particular area for the size would go for around 1,500 a month. So the situation is that this particular tenant is quite elderly, in his 80s, and is deteriorating. There's a lot of back issues to mental health issues, alcohol, self-medication, that sort of thing. So we've got a lot to deal with there. Now, initially, what my client wanted was the lodger out, just wanted eviction. We looked at everything available, and from my opinion, yes, and I've said this before, I really should focus on the fact that it is the client, the landlord, that's paying my bills at the end of the day. But I like a more holistic approach to everything, and if at all possible, I like to see the tenant come out of this in a way that isn't going to basically just leave them on the streets. Now, I know realistically that's not actually the option. You know, there's councils, there's housing associations that will help people, there's homeless shelters, but I want to avoid that. So what I looked at was the current tenant situation and the likelihood, given his age, given his mental health, given his deteriorating health. First of all, the property is not something that he can maintain. It's not somewhere that's going to be safe for him to live, because we found out that he'd actually fallen over a few times and injured himself. So what I did was contact the local council in that area, and I spoke to them at length. Now, like all councils, the knee-jerk reaction was, no, they're a tenant, you'll have to serve notice, wait to the bailiffs, and then we'll do something. So I was like, okay, that's fine. However, it's going to cost you £16,000 to basically help this gentleman through the homelessness process. And you're going to end up putting him in a property anyway, because you're going to find that he meets all of the assessment needs. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I left it with the council there. And then I went to the adult social services for that area. And I spoke to a social worker and explained the situation. Now, obviously, I'm in a position where this tenant is not my client. I don't have any authority to act on the tenant's behalf. So this was more of a fishing for information exercise. This wasn't a, this is the tenant, this is Mr. So-and-so and so-and-so, what can you do for him? This was a, hello, Mr. Social Worker, I have a client that I'm dealing with. The tenant is in this situation, as a ballpark idea, what services are available. Now, that social worker basically said to me, there's a lot we can do, but we need engagement with the tenant. And I said, absolutely. So that social worker took it upon themselves to pop round to the property unannounced and just do a welfare call. She said, we can do that under the Care Act, and anyone can anonymously ring up and say they are concerned about someone's welfare. So that was great. The social worker went round and managed to speak to this gentleman. Now, the social worker came back to me and said, oh my God, absolutely, this gentleman needs help. Now, between social services getting themselves together and everything that I was doing behind the scenes with our landlord, the gentleman took a bit of a turn for the worst. He stopped eating, he stopped drinking, and basically left himself in a bit of a mess in the property. Somebody called an ambulance, and the gentleman was taken into hospital. Now, having spoken to the council said he's only in hospital for a couple of days, he's going to be released back to the property. I said, do you know what, that's not really the best idea. Now, the issue that we had was the landlord obviously hasn't done anything remotely legislative wise. So there's no gas certificates in place, there's nothing, luckily there was no deposit, but no gas certificates, no nothing in place with regards to this tenant being in occupation. So that was back in, where are we now? That was back in June. So basically I said to adult social services, look, the tenant's in hospital now, and after some basic assessment from the A&E doctors, they've put him into a bed for a couple of days, but it's still looking about the fact that we're going to release him. So I did quite a lot of research with regards to this, and I then was able to go back to adult social services and say, look, under Mental Health Act, under the care provisions of that particular local council and the care provisions in regards to adult social services, I want you to do the following things. I want him transferred to an assessment bed. I want an occupational therapist's assessment. I want someone to go to the property and assess the suitability of that accommodation for the gentleman. And I also want a mental health assessment done. Oh, no, you can't demand those, I'm told. I said, I'm not demanding. There's a difference. I'm telling you that's your legal obligation. So a few emails went backwards and forwards, and in the end I got my way, and the gentleman was placed in an assessment bed, ready to have these assessments carried out. Now obviously with COVID and everything, we understood this wasn't going to happen overnight. The gentleman is still in hospital in the assessment bed because he has deteriorated slightly. Now, the issue here at the moment is we have served a Section 21 notice simply because we needed something in place with the request of the council so that they could start things moving their end. So a Section 21 was served just over 2 months ago now, so it expires at the end of October. And that's basically spurred the council on to start doing something with regards to his accommodation. Now, the other conversation that I had with the council was regards to the rent that the occupant was paying and the fact that none of the bills are in his name. So what I basically said was once the Section 21 expires, which back then Section 21s were 3 months notice, so once it expires in 3 months time, we will be looking to put the rent up to, it will still be below market value, but it will be a lot higher than what he's paying now. And we will be looking at transferring all of the bills, so gas, electricity, council tax, into his name. Because previous to this, the actual owner had been paying all of the bills because he still considered the occupant to be a lodger and wasn't aware of the change of tenure. So that's what I've said to the council, and social services get copied into all of these correspondence. Now they've come back to me and said that I don't have a legal right to put the rent up. So I've put them right in regards to yes, I can. So it's all to do with how we use and manipulate the councils in regards to getting the best outcome for everybody. Now, the best outcome I want, obviously, is I want my client's property back for them. But given the tenant's poor health, poor mental state, inability to care for himself, my real moral is with ensuring that that particular tenant has the care and support and a property where they're going to be safe. So that's what I'm pushing for. Now, whether we actually execute the Section 21 is a different matter, and that's a conversation that I will have with the owner closer to the date. With regards to the Section 13 notice for the rent increase, we can issue that at any time. That's not time specific. So if we decide to leave it another month or whatever, we can do that. But it's all about making the councils aware that you mean business. And I think sometimes when landlords are working directly with councils, councils obviously are seen as the authority, and especially when social services are involved, then you have a position where I think some landlords who aren't confident with the legislation, don't work in that environment on a regular basis, maybe just take at face value what councils and local authorities say, rather than actually knowing what the legalities are, what the legal duties are. And that's what I do. I work although I am paid by the landlord 9 times out of 10, I am looking at what is the best outcome for everybody here. What are the options? Now, absolutely, I could have worked with that landlord, served a Section 21, done absolutely nothing else, and then come the end of October, we moved to take it to court. But that wouldn't have really been the best outcome overall, because my landlord still has a conscience. I have a conscience. And it isn't just about, you know, evict the tenant, evict the tenant. I see it so many times. It isn't about evicting a tenant. It's a human being at the end of the day. Now, this person has not defaulted on their rent. They've paid their rent religiously for the last, goodness, I don't know how many years. They've been in the property since 1989, always paid the rent as a lodger. And then obviously, like I say, when the owner passed away and the property passed over, they've continued to pay the rent. So there's no issue. They're not a bad tenant. They're not a bad human being. They're just somebody who has deteriorated with age and lifestyle. That person needs to be in a place that is safe and secure for them. And a lot of times, social services and local authorities are so busy with the volume of people coming through their doors that they like to see the easy option to get the details off their desk so it's no longer their problem. And in this particular situation, they saw that this person had a tenancy and had a property to return to. So the easiest option for the council and social services would just return them to the property. It's off my desk, it's no longer a problem. But that's not the best outcome for the tenant. So what I'm basically saying here is when I work with clients, I look at everything. I'm looking at the client situation, I'm looking at the tenant situation, and I'm looking outside of the box to see what else we can do to fix everyone's problem. I always remember the A-team when I was a kid, and I think the opening line for that is, if you've got a problem and you don't know where to go, call the A-team. I'm pretty much the A-team. I just like to fix everything. I like to fix the problem for everybody. So what I will do is obviously continue to update you on this particular situation because it is quite an ongoing one. But I just wanted to give you a little bit more of an insight into what I do and how I work with people. And it isn't just a case of, go in, evict and be done with it. A lot of the times there's a lot more to people's complex lives and situations. And eviction isn't always the answer. So thanks for listening, and I will keep you updated. And obviously, as I see more clients and more cases that are the juicy ones, I will obviously post you some information and updates. Thank you.